Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking all about early ice panfish. We're going to be talking where to find them, how to catch them, and strategies for putting as many of them on the ice as possible. We're going to be talking to Will Pappenfus, who is a really good multi-species angler, but he especially knows how to find and catch big panfish, whether it's crappies or bluegills. As you can see in these pictures, he's caught a few big fish in his time, so he knows how to find them, he knows how to put them on the ice. But first things first, let's jump in with Will. Let's talk about location.
Well, early ice, it's a little different. You know, we just got ice over the lake. There's no oxygen getting into the water. Most of those fish are gonna dive to the weeds, so shallow cabbage beds anywhere from, let's say, 7 feet to 12 feet. Your best time for a big one is probably gonna be in the mornings and evenings. It seems that the smaller fish disappear and the bigger ones come out to play. They might be a little bit harder to catch, but if you get one to go, they're usually gonna be big. Hooked up. Come on, buddy. That'll make a sandwich. Perfect eater.
Now, of course, fish love weeds, but the basin can also play a huge factor on early ice for panfish.
So when you're looking at early ice, if you're trying to get on a basin bite, you know, a lot of the lakes, it might be a little early. It kind of depends. You have to go out, try a lot of trial and error. But if you're looking at more of a basin bite, you know, I'd check the shallower ones first, just because those fish might not be pushed out that deep yet. But if you're probably fishing, you know, a deeper lake, you know, let's say the lake gets like, you know, deeper, like 40, 50 feet, they might be in some of those deeper basins already. You just have to drill and check it out.
What's the most efficient way to find them?
Panoptics. Done. No, the best way to do it is just, you know, get a couple buddies, grab a couple augers and just start drilling. Grab your graph, start hole hopping around. You just gotta find them. It can take a lot of work. Don't always just start fishing one hole. Cover water, you know, if you're not marking any fish, don't fish it. You know, a lot of times they could be only, you know, 10 feet next to you and you're just sitting there waiting for them. But most of the times they're 40, 50 feet. You know, you get enough pressure on top of the ice here. You're walking around, especially if it's shallow, the fish are gonna spook a lot of times. But even deeper, even if those fish are 25, 30 feet down, they're gonna get spooked by your auger, by walking around. So a lot of times you just gotta be patient, or other times you gotta be mobile. It's just, you just have to see what the fish are doing that day.
Now, as some of you may know, there are some situations where moving around can actually work against you. Here is one of those times.
So a lot of the clear water lakes, if they're shallow, most of the time I'm not gonna drill a bunch of holes. I'm usually just gonna sit and wait them out in a small area, just because I don't wanna spook them. Because most of the time if you drill like 5 or 6 holes, those fish are gonna push, you know, hundreds of yards sometimes, even because they can hear it, they can see you. You know, if it's deeper and it's still clear, a lot of times they're still gonna do that too. So if you have darker bodies of water and you have the sun out, that's usually gonna be your best bang for your buck.
Now let's jump into Will's go-to lures and presentations for early ice panfish.
Basically I have 2 different approaches. I'm gonna use a spoon for sure. I'm gonna have a spoon tied up like a UV forage minnow or a small buckshot. Spoons I'm gonna be tipping with wax worms for sure, at least 1 or 2 of them, just to make sure I get every hook covered. Because a lot of times they'll come up, fly up to it, and they'll see one little red hook sticking off there and they're not gonna eat it. So make sure you keep those hooks covered. Otherwise I'm just gonna have a little tungsten ice jig too. The biggest thing is that you have to tell what the fish are doing that day. Every day is different with pressure, you know, conditions, you know, sun. You just have to kind of figure it out as you go. But most of the time I'm gonna start with a spoon. Most of the time just because I wanna get the bigger fish out of the school most of the time. If they're just coming up and picking at it, then I'm gonna switch to a tungsten. I'm gonna have to weed through to try and get the bigger ones. But if you can get away with using a spoon or a small ripping shad and they're gonna come up and hit it, it's a lot of fun.
Now, anytime that you use something a little bit bigger for early ice panfish, whether it's a spoon or a panfish size rattle bait, you're gonna have to play the aggressive nature of the fish. You can't really finesse them the same way you would if you're using a small tungsten jig. You have to play a little bit of the keep away game. So with that in mind, here's how Will uses a spoon in this situation.
most of the times with a spoon, you know, you're trying to get them to chase it. You know, you're trying to get them to come up and absolutely crush it as hard as they can. So most of the time, if I only have one fish on the screen or two on the screen, I'm just gonna kind of jig it right above them, kind of slow. But if you have a school, I want to raise that jig up, make them chase as fast, and get that big one to come up and crush it.
Now there's a couple different reasons why you might consider using a spoon on early ice when you're chasing panfish. Number one is drop speed. Now a spoon is gonna drop a lot more quickly than a small lead or tungsten panfish jig. And why that's important is because when you're fishing in deep water or moderate depths and you have to drop that bait down 10, 15 plus feet, a spoon is gonna get down a lot faster. And what that means for you is it means that you're gonna be able to cover water a lot more quickly. You're gonna be able to cover a lot more holes. And that's a big deal when you're trying to find panfish on early ice. Sometimes it's a numbers game, fishing as many holes as you possibly can, and a spoon is gonna help you do that a lot more efficiently. Number two is the fact that a spoon can call fish into your hole from a distance, and it has, in some cases, they have internal rattle systems that create sound, and additionally, all of them pretty much have split rings down in the bottom by the bottom treble hook, and whether it's the internal rattles or the split rings, it's gonna make sound that calls fish in from a distance. Additionally, the larger profile is easier for fish to see, so that's another reason why you might pull fish to your hole, which can be extremely important when you're fishing in clear water situations where you don't want to be moving around quite as often. Calling fish in can be a critical factor. Now, with that in mind, we're going to talk about Will's number one biggest mistake that he sees on early ice when folks are chasing panfish.
The biggest mistake I see is honestly people making too much noise, you know. You know, it's a lot of times they're still kind of spooky, they're still kind of not used to the ice, you know, and a lot of times you're fishing shallow. So most of the time what I do is, you know, I'm only fishing 1 to 3 holes every time I go out. I'm just going to stand a little bit of ways from my hole and wait for them to come to me.
Now Will has had a ton of success finding red hot panfish bites on lakes that are a little bit off the beaten path. Now here's his really simple recipe for finding lakes that hold big panfish.
Best thing is to stay small. I like fishing as many small lakes as I can. Number one, it doesn't take long to drill out and figure out what's in there. Number two, it doesn't take a lot of work to get out there. And number three, it usually holds the biggest fish.
I absolutely agree with Will on this one. I love fishing small little panfish lakes on early ice, and the reason for that is because you can pull up a map and you can point at this spot, you can point at that spot, you can point at that spot, and say, I think those are the 3 places where panfish might live on this particular lake, and you can drill those areas out, you can fish them, and if there's no fish there, you can hop over to the lake just down the road and do the exact same thing. So this is just a really efficient way to find panfish on early ice. If you're fishing quickly and covering a lot of water and drilling holes, you know, in a hurry, maybe you got a buddy with you, you could actually cover 2, 3, maybe even 4 lakes in one day. And one thing that I'll also say, if you are gonna try and cover multiple lakes in a day, is try and pick lakes that are different from one another. So you might have a lake that's shallow and muddy, and then you might have a lake that's clear and deep, and you might have lakes that are more basin oriented, you might have lakes with a lot of good cabbage weed. So try different lakes that have different habitat, because on some days the fish might be more active in this type of lake and not as active in this type of lake. So just keep that in mind. I will say one thing about fishing smaller lakes that I don't like is that they can often be extremely vulnerable to over-harvest. So it's not very difficult for a number of anglers, once a lake like this is found out about, it's not difficult for those anglers to fish out a lake and keep the majority of the large fish inside that lake, inside that fishery, and it can take years and years for those panfish populations to recover. So that's one reason that I don't really like fishing those smaller lakes, especially where I live here in central Minnesota, and I know down in the metro area of Minneapolis or Madison or wherever there's a lot of angling pressure, that can be a big problem. So in those situations, if you live somewhere where there's a lot of anglers and there's a lot of over harvest on those smaller lakes, you might consider going to the bigger lakes. And the caveat I will say with that one is on early ice, you need to make sure there's enough ice. But on those bigger lakes, it's a lot more difficult for a group of anglers to over harvest the entire lake and keep all the big ones, because there's just a lot of really good places for the fish to hide in lakes like that. So I would also consider looking at big lakes as well, in addition to the smaller lakes, if you're having a hard time finding fish. It's gonna take longer and it's gonna be harder to find the fish, but once you find them, it's gonna be a lot more difficult for those fish to disappear. So it might take you a few days of drilling and looking around different structure areas or giant weed flats, but once you find the fish, it can be extremely rewarding. Now, last but not least, we're gonna wrap this video up with some safety tips from Will.
So the biggest thing early ice is definitely safety. Definitely wear your ice picks. You know, we've been on this lake already. We've got about 9 inches. There's an ice castle out here already. So basically we're good with that right now. But you know, if you're dealing with, 3 to 5 inches ice, it could vary very fast. So I always have my ice picks. I have a spud bar spudding my way out. Don't be afraid to bring a life jacket either. Nobody's gonna make fun of you for wearing a life jacket. You know, we just want you all to be safe out there. You have to take the proper precautions first couple times out. You know, kind of get comfortable with it. And once you do that, then you're good to go.
All right, now that wraps things up for this video. Hopefully you're able to pick out a few different things that'll help you catch a few more panfish on early ice this season. If you enjoyed this video and you learned something, hit that little red subscribe button down below and make sure to stay tuned, because we got a lot more good videos coming this winter. Until next time, thank you for watching.